Man, do I love to worship God. I love to lift my voice to Him, shout praises, sing praises, slower songs, upbeat songs, a little dancing. I love to participate in worship. And it's a very common part of many of our worship gatherings in Christianity all around the world through different styles and different traditions, but praise and worship is a part of it. And it goes all the way back to David, even Moses singing to God, an expression of faith. But what is it about singing that we love, and how is it connected with the kingdom of God? I have a great guest with me today. His name is Micah Pace, and he's a worship leader out in Kentucky. And he was also involved somewhat in the Asbury revival, outpouring, whatever you want to call that happened in the spring. And so we had just an amazing conversation about that time and relating it to worship in general and what our heart should be here in the culture of the kingdom. So first of all, I just want to let you know again about my book that just came out. It's getting rave reviews, and a lot of people are just telling me how much it blessed them. We were reborn for this. You can look it up on Amazon. It's about the Jesus model for living heaven on earth. There's also a link in the description. So if you want to go wherever you are listening to this on whatever platform, you can go into the description and get the book there. There's also going to be a link for a free book, and there'll also be a link to some of Micah Pace's stuff. And, before we move on, remember to like and follow and share, this great podcast. I get to talk with so many amazing people, so many great interviews. You have just a lot of great content. So go ahead and like and follow and share this podcast. So with all that said, let's get to it. Well, welcome back to Kingdom Over Coffee. As usual, I have a guest, and as usual, it's a guest I'm really excited about because it's my podcast. Why would I have guests on here that I would not be excited about? I got better things to do than just be bored or be frustrated with some special guests. But I have Micah Pace with me today. How you doing, Micah?
Hey, man. Doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem. And we've already been having a good conversation. I got in contact with Micah through his mother-in-law. And,
that's right.
And so publicly, he's going to say how great his mother-in-law is on this podcast, because I'm sure she will listen. Number one,
right, yes.
But she said, you really got to interview Micah because, she just thought we'd have a lot in common creatively. You may not know this, Micah, but I'm a songwriter and an author and a musician, and I've led worship and do all that sort of stuff too. So she's like, you really just got to interview him. So why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself, Micah?
That is fantastic. Yeah. No, and absolutely shout out to mother-in-law. She's incredible. She loves and loves our kiddos like none other. Really invests in Abby and I. It's really a blessing to have her just believe in songwriting or God's calling on my life. And so, a totally unpaid ad there, right? Full disclosure. Love it. Yeah, man. But no, thanks for having me. My name is Micah. I'm currently in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm a worship pastor at a local church here. Married for 7 years with 4 kiddos, right?
Wow. You got busy early.
Well, listen, that wasn't the plan, right? It is God reveals his plan early. He's like, I ain't messing around, because it was like we were on the honeymoon and I had already set out, babe, here's the 5-year plan. I've got this on paper. I am a creative. I love a good Excel sheet. Love it. Love it. And then 7 months later, she says, well, how about that 5-year plan? Because it's just sped up a lot. So, and once you start, you just might as well just keep the train going. So
yeah, man. Well, and it's it's man makes his plans, but his steps are ordered by the Lord, right? I mean, I forget the quote. I forget who said the quote, but we make our plans and God laughs or whatever.
And God laughs, yeah.
And so, and just real quickly, and we'll get back to more about you, but real quickly, there was, from what I remember, because I remember praying for Bear, because there were some health issues early on with Bear. How's he doing now?
Yeah, he's doing much better, I guess is the way I would put it. He's just started kindergarten. And yeah, he had a number. You probably prayed for him a good bit because he was our first and really put us through a lot. I know he didn't do it on purpose, but sometimes you look back and you're like, what the heck? With NICU stay, Abby had a really hard pregnancy there with preeclampsia at the end, and it's your first time. Like you have no idea. You have no idea what they're throwing out these words, and you're like, this, like, should I be concerned? I'm not going to Google it because that's a terrible idea, but not really understanding the gravity of it all. And so he spent 2 weeks in the NICU. Just didn't want to breathe, and so like that, walking through that, but he's getting through that. And then, let's see, he was about a year, I guess, 16 months when we found out we were pregnant with our second, Bo, who was born the following December. So she's born in December, and then in January we find out that he has a brain tumor on his spinal cord at the top. Had no idea, right? Abby noticed some things and was like, I just don't think things are right. And then that just began the process. And so that is now every 6 months we go in for a checkup. They're calling it benign. It's not moving. It hasn't grown, by the absolute grace of God, but, it's really cool. And to your point here, Abby and I meet people often who are like, Bear, been praying for Bear forever. It's like, I have no idea who you are, but thank you. Thank you for, but just like this piece, right? Of like, man, the kingdom. And when someone says, hey, I'm praying, to know what that feels like, to know like, hey, thank you. Yeah. Because that's a really big deal to us, that you would intercede before God the Father, before our Son. Like that means a whole lot. Yeah. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. It was obviously close with Michelle and Bethany and a lot of those guys, and when for grandma, it's grandparent love is different, bro. I mean, I haven't experienced it personally, right? I mean, and I hope not to for
get some space
for another few years, but I have seen the shift. I see the shift, and I have seen the shift in my parents, my in-laws, and other people who come into being grandparents, and just the different level of love. It's a very special thing. And I believe it's God ordained. I think it's biblical. I think it's who He is. So let's get back a little bit to you. You live in Lexington. What else about you? Married, 4 kids.
Married, 4 kids. Love writing songs. I'm sure we already talked about that a little bit. Love writing for the church, for my wife, like just love writing. I really appreciate that. I got to release an EP earlier this year, which was a really just cool God thing to have people partner with, and to put something out there that's yours that means a lot. And as a creative, anytime you put anything, right, it can be in front of your family, like, well, here's my heart on a string, like, please don't stomp on it too much, right? And I remember asking someone way further down the line, like, hey, does that ever go away? Like, oh no, never. Not at all. Like, they just released their 5th album. We're doing really well. It's like every song I write, I'm like, this could be it. Or if you write a good one or a good book or whatever, that's all I got, right? Like, I have tapped my potential. That's all I have. So I'm nowhere near that, but I really appreciate the experience of getting to do that as a songwriter, as an artist. Just a really cool process. And so that, we've been at our church now for 6 going on 7 years. So we had no kids when I started here, and now we have 4 kids. So, and they all tithe, so it's great. It's
there you go. There you go.
Teach them young. No,
there you go. It's like, look, this is Daddy's paycheck here.
This is it, right? Y'all better. Them pennies, they just recycling. They just on the cycle. No, that's good.
10%. Of course, I didn't do tithing, but I did do. I don't know if you do this, but I would do. Especially when they were younger, I would do daddy tax. I would be like, oh, that looks like a good piece of cake, daddy tax.
That's it.
Like, I'm preparing you for when you start making money one day, and the government takes 30% of what you.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
So are you like the main worship leader at your church? Are you?
Yep. And so, my technical title is creative arts director, right?
Woo-hoo.
Which encompasses 100 things, right? Just as church does. That's just across the board. So
yeah,
I get the opportunity to preach a number of times of the year, which I really appreciate.
Nice.
It's great. And something what's really cool is to be able to have connections with, young in college who are wanting to have an interest or a calling in their heart to lead worship, and trying to steward that well. It's like, hey, you're not a karaoke machine, right? Like you have a higher calling. And maybe that's not to preach, but you should be able to communicate what you're doing, right? You should be able from stage to communicate, this is why worship matters. This is why, not that someone has their thumb on you, but just out of passion, when so many times we can just get lost in like, well, it's just, I just feel so connected or emotional or something like that. It's like, hey, that's all great. Right. But so I've really appreciated the opportunity to preach and to preach on things, that are passionate, or I can try to connect the church a little more to like, hey, here's what we mean with worship through music, with worship through prayer, all these things. And so I have a fantastic team here. Love working with them, building up other, vocalists into worship leaders. The difference in singing a song and leading a song, right? All those things have been such a joy and a journey over the last 6 years here.
All right. So I've got 2 questions from all that. And so I'll just get to the first one.
Yeah.
So talk more about that, because you and I are on, it sounds like we're on the same page here. I grew up in church, right?
Yeah, right. PK, let's go.
And my experience was when God called me, he didn't call me out of the church, but he called me out of religion. He called me out of, because I knew how to put on the face and say the right words and do the churchianity stuff. Yeah, and when I realized this is real, like when God really spoke to me, and I realized, oh, this isn't a game. This isn't just a social club. This isn't something we do on Sundays. This isn't, of course, we were going, I'm old, right? We did the whole Sunday night. We did the whole thing. But when I realized that, I was like, I can't do performance with God. He sees me. He sees the worst of me inside of me. And, why am I dressing up? All of that stuff that I started to, just kind of deal with as a young man. And that carried over into leading worship. I'm not just performing a song. So as you know, from being in the church world, that you do get some of that. You do get some of that performance within certain churches. So tell me about what God's taught you about leading praise and worship. What's the difference between performing a song and leading a song? What's the difference to you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so much of what we try to just cultivate like the hearts of our leaders is really a lot of it is a heart posture of like, hey, and it's great to have a team you can really talk to and say like, hey, listen, I can hire the best musicians in town and have the best sounding mix, the best sounding team, we can do that, right? But I believe and I really believe that that hey, listen, you're a part of this team. You're part of something more. That's why we have really high standards when it comes to, hey, like if we don't see you worshiping off the stage, then we'll have a conversation, right? It can't just be,
thank you,
searching for the stage, because there's always a bigger stage. There's always, and you know what? You probably can build your talent enough to keep building up the stage and chasing that ladder, just like anything. But it really is a heart posture. And it really is. And it's more than, someone who was it recently was like, is it just like at the end of the song, like you just keep it going, like you just keep singing? It's like that's not what no, yes, sometimes I get what you're saying, but But no, it's a heart posture. When you were presenting a song, we really, really try to teach the team to train them up to like, hey, we don't use chord charts, right? Especially if you're leading a song, because I don't want you thinking about what the next lyric is. Because that means you don't know it well enough to lead someone into it, right? Like if I'm having to hunt through, what's verse 2 again? Then I cannot very firmly establish like, hey, here's where we're going, church, right? Verse 2, we're going to sing about the mercy and the goodness of God. And then the chorus is our response. Like I need to know the structure of the song so that I can take these, if it's 5 people or 500, it doesn't matter. I can take them before the throne. And so that's a big piece too. So a lot of that's, accountability of like, hey, you have a great voice. That's great. But I want to know that you want to lead this congregation, not just sing a song, not karaoke. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great, man. I love that, because for me, again, it was like, I don't want to play games. I don't want this to be just another religious meeting. For me, part of what I would do is part of my thinking and that heart posture is worship doesn't happen on the stage. Worship happens in the middle of the congregation. Right, so for me, if the congregation isn't worshiping, and it's different than just singing along, right? If we're in this together, like this isn't like I'm going to do a great job so they'll sing along, right? In some sort of emotional manipulation sort of thing. Which, come on, as musicians, you can emotionally manipulate people, right?
So easy.
But no, we're like you're saying, a lot of that is teaching. A lot of that is teaching the people what worship is, where it is, how to get there. That worship, worship is a place. It's not a thing you do. Right now around the throne, there are angels and beings going, and that's in your heart. Yeah. Like you don't have to work that up, but you have to know where it is and what it is. Like you have to know where it is and what it is, because if I feel like it, that's not
this emotional high.
That's an emotional high. And not that God doesn't give you emotional highs, but that's not my goal. That's not our goal here. Our goal here is to engage him, and so much teaching happens within praise and worship. It says, I think twice, right, in the New Testament, teaching and speaking to one another in hymns, songs, and spiritual songs. It's like you're teaching each other. This isn't just an inspirational, emotional high so you can make it through the sermon. This is and then it dies. This is a teaching moment in and of itself, and there's so much value in that. And
that's beautiful.
How did that? At what point did you start writing songs with that?
I would say, 3 years ago. But part of that, and you understand, like part of that is this professionalism of like, I don't think I'm a perfectionist, but I don't want to maybe say I'm doing something unless I know it's to a quality, right? However, I was cracking up recently. We were going through the garage cleaning it out, right? And I found all these old journals. I love journaling. I love writing. And so I found, dating back to when I was, I think 8, I think was the earliest one I found. And I had songs. I had lyric ideas I had in there that I don't remember. Right. But that really struck a chord in me, of like, you know what? Because again, I would say 3 years, but I think that's just been a piece of who God made me, of just write. I wasn't writing towards something at that point, but I enjoy writing. I enjoy the process, and but it probably wasn't until 3 years ago on a whim that Abby took me to a night of worship that led to meeting a bunch of writers, that led to writing with one guy who wrote this song, Be the One. His name's Tim Matape, excellent friend, wonderful song. And at that time, that song was written, and so much of this connects to worship, because worship, right, isn't just the mountain high worshiping, right? So much people coming in the room having the absolute worst week of their life.
Right. Yeah.
And
sure.
you can still worship out of that, right? Even worship leaders like, hey, you can lead worship out of your grief. You can lead worship out of that in the correct moments. But Be the One, I would say, is the song, but it was written out of our third, Boone, was in the NICU again. Both my boys spent 2 weeks in the NICU. And I was super frustrated. Total transparency. Like, okay, God, we've already done this one. Like, we've already been on this boat. Give us a different boat. I don't want to be back in here.
No.
The NICU,
right.
I mean, it's for those of you who have been in a NICU, right? Some of the most amazing nurses, but also really kind of dark place. Like, there's no windows. It's our experience, but all these monitors are beeping. It's just a lot, especially for a new parent. So I'm right with him, and so that's going on. And they had actually a couple of days before had just had just had a miscarriage. And so I was like, man, do you want to write today? He was like, I really need to write today. And so Be the One was birthed out of that. This song that questions like, when you take it all away and I'm exposed, when I don't know what to pray, where does my heart go? And so these really authentic and raw lyrics. And so like that really sparked something in me to go like, you know what, maybe God, and a piece of this, you may be able to speak more. A piece of it was, I don't know that I had much to say up until like being a dad, if I'm honest. Like there's stuff but I didn't feel passionate about enough stuff like to put into words. God, I was frustrated, but you were still there, right? God, and you can kind of see that if you listen to the EP, you can see like, oh, these songs are probably written in a moment about something very, specific to the song. So,
right.
So that was the longest way to say 3 years that I could possibly tell you.
No, that's, dude, that's so amazing. And one of my questions was going to be, because I love that you bring that out, is that, you read through the Psalms of David, and how many of his Psalms were, God, everyone's against me.
Yeah, they're not happy.
Like there's a lot of those songs are not happy songs.
Yeah,
but
right.
He always closes with, but you. He always closes with a refocusing on who God is. And one of my favorites, I think it's in the 70s somewhere, 70. But one of my favorite is where he talks about, man, I'm looking around and the wicked people get stuff.
Yeah,
I'm here doing what's good and right, and I get nothing. And all these wicked, awful people are riding on nice horses. And
they're
doing
prospering
all this,
against me. Yep.
And he's like, and then it says, and then there's a turn. It says, but then I went into the house of God.
Yeah.
And I remembered their end. I remembered that this is a temporary thing.
Right.
That there is an eternal reality that's going to reveal itself. And it orients his brain and his mind and his heart. And then the rest of, and it humbles him. He's like, forgive me for thinking this way. Forgive me. I mean, it's just a beautiful psalm. But so I wanted to kind of touch on that with you, because like, how much of that experience did you have before, and how much of going through the stuff with Bear and then your kids how much of that did you learn during those times of like, well, I got to get up and lead worship. Yeah. And I don't know if my kid's I don't know what's going on with my kid. I mean, that's a serious thing, man. Like,
right.
Like when you're a parent, like kids are awesome, but when it's your kid, like it's serious, and it shakes you. So tell me about some of that experience, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And I can remember, I picked up a guitar when I was 16. I'm a pastor's kid, too. My dad was either a lead pastor or a worship pastor growing up. Most of what I can remember. And so I was blessed to be, brought up in that. And there is definitely a decision. My wife and I did some young adult ministry when we got to Northeast, which is where we're at, the church right now, for a while. And we called it the wandering realm, or like the wandering zone, the drifting zone. We had all these names for it. But essentially when you come out of high school, like there's, and mom and dad aren't there to wake you up for church. Like you get to be your own person. And we found you rarely do you stay where you're at, like a very small margin. You either fully walk away,
right,
because you don't think it's a priority in your life anymore,
right,
or you dive head in and you are more on fire than you've ever been in your whole life. And you just see that. And so I can definitely, I remember, just looking back, I picked it up at 16. And I remember moments, but again, at 16, like there's a lot of bad things that happen to 16-year-old, but like in my case, I didn't have a lot of those moments. Right. And it wasn't later on until, in college, I went to Asbury and I studied worship leading, worship arts there. There were some moments there, right, where you're trying to navigate, God, I have to lead chapel. I don't feel like it, right? Or I'm working with this. But no, to your point, everything changes when your kid's in the NICU for the second week and you have to step on stage, right? And lead a room before the throne. And man, it's a hard dynamic because you can't go up there and sing. It's not that you're trying to hinder your emotions or say, okay, I'm going to fake how I feel. Right. Because then people are going like, isn't his kid in the hospital? Like, why is he singing Glorious Day? Like what, but there is a reality of like, you know what? I may not feel like jumping to Glorious Day, but I'm going to settle my heart. I'm going to, in David's realm, I'm going to skip to the end, remind myself of who, and there is a glorious day and worship and lead out of that. Right. But that takes a lot. Cause it can, the enemy works in a lot of ways to distract. And it can really knock you off your horse. You get a bad phone call on Saturday night. You come and you're like, I just don't feel like, and I appreciate that vulnerability from a lot of our leaders to go like, hey, I'm sorry. Let's pray through that. And now take that and let's lead this room because someone in here is going through a very similar, if not the same thing.
Yeah.
And they need to know that that's okay to have those feelings, to bring that before God. And they need to know that not everybody here is faking this emotional high that they don't have because they're not going through a really good time. Right.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So it's incredible.
Yeah. Because that's where we get hope. That's where you give people hope. If you don't, and that's what I love about the Psalms of David or even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. You don't deny the pain. God never dismisses the pain. He never dismisses the grief. He's a comforter. All of those things. And yet to just stay in the grief without hope, that's not God either. Like he never dismisses grief. Jesus cried at the tomb of Lazarus, knowing he was about to raise the guy from the dead.
He knew the end, right?
But that doesn't mean that the pain isn't worth the grief, isn't worth being real about it. So both kind of coincide. So, you mentioned Asbury, and I did want to kind of get to this a little bit. How did you, so back in the spring, and it seems like forever ago now.
I know, right?
Our world just skips ahead to the next news item.
To what's the next thing? Yep.
And yet, I know I was, and a lot of people were very encouraged. This past week, there was, a couple hundred people got saved at Auburn, and so God's moving and working. And I know we've been praying, at our church and other places for God to really reveal himself to this generation. And we won't get into all that, but just that whole Asbury time. So you were connected with Asbury to some degree. So how did you, I know you led worship a few times maybe. So talk about how you got involved with that during the quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, revival, awakening, whatever term, religious term you want to give it. And then kind of, it's been 6 months or so. What are your thoughts on it now? Like what, with some perspective. So how did you get involved, and give me some perspective?
Yeah, for sure. And so I'd already had connections, having gone there and graduated. I met my wife there.
Wow.
She ended up transferring to IU, to finish her degree, but I was there. And I went there. I wanted to play it up until 22. I thought I was going to the MLB. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to play Major League Baseball.
Really?
I was homeschooled growing up. So like I would get my schoolwork done by 11 and behind my house were 5 baseball fields. So I just lived on the baseball field, right? And so so I went to Asbury, which doesn't make sense. You're like, oh, okay, your dreams were probably far off. I mean, you're NAI at that point. I think they're D3 now, but it's like, okay, maybe not the most perceptive thing we could have done, but I really felt a call to lead worship, and I wanted to know more, to grow more, to hone my very uncrafted skills of singing and playing and all those things. And so I went to Asbury and just really felt, I really did. I really felt like just the Lord's hand, like, hey, I had this place for you, these relationships, these leaders, these mentors. And I had a fantastic experience. I did have a midlife crisis my junior year and added a double major. So I graduated with a worship arts and an audio engineering degree. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, what if I can't get a job in one, I can surely get a job in the other. And, just crazy stuff. But it served me really well. They pair very well together.
Absolutely, they do.
And so I'm kind of, thankful looking back at that. But yeah, so I had a bunch of connections there. Even after graduating, we're in Lexington. So Asbury's 15 minutes from my house. We're on the south side of Lex. And so still stayed connected through, honestly, after my first job in the church, my first assignment, it was not great. And I really tapped back into like, hey, I don't want to, it's not a warning for people coming out of college worship, but like, hey, it's okay for you to set standards for yourself, right? It's okay for you to have bars of like, I'm not just looking for any worship leading job. I want to go somewhere where they value me, where my voice is valued, where I'm not just an MP3 player for them, like all those things.
Yeah.
And so I've always been kind of connected with either worship arts or old professors reaching out, like stuff like that. And even more so, Zach Mearkrebs, who preached the message of
kind of kicked it off.
Right. It kind of kicked it off.
Yeah.
Was a mentor of mine that I met in my internship through Asbury. And he's mentored me a ton, he's a great friend now as you get older, but really helped me through a lot of stuff through college and then early years of marriage. So thankful for him. And so, I'm following him, cause again, we're 15 minutes and it's probably day 3 of the, I believe they're calling it the Awakening or Outpouring. He has a really good, I can't remember where it's at, but he talks about how like revivals are usually named revivals like later. He said, like, after I'm dead, they'll call it whatever they want to call it, right? I'm not going to worry about that. God can call it what he call it. But it's probably day 3. It's interesting.
I'm with you. Yeah.
It's and so we're probably into day 3, and I'm seeing like he posted on Instagram. He posted he was preaching that day. He was sitting in the balcony, and he just posted a picture of the empty room. It was like, hey, speaking today on Romans. About love and just pray. I saw it. I was like, oh, how cool, and I remember taking a moment and praying. God used Zach to speak to those students, and then seeing like a couple other things. God's moving, some updates, but then when it really started to pick up a little more outward traction, probably day 3 or so. We're wrapping stuff up, and I'm like, hey. Abby, you want to take the kids down to something's going on at Asbury. I don't know, but we're close. Let's go down. And man, it is hard to describe in the very limited word knowledge I have of just how like even this drive that I have done thousands of times, right? Even driving to the campus, I remember looking up and just seeing this like, these billowing clouds just like surrounding it. It was like, I was like, listen, I'm not trying to over spiritualize everything, but this is crazy. This is just crazy. And so we get there, and I know the campus really well. So like parking wasn't an issue and stuff at that time. We go in and, just unreal. I mean, the most like combination of Revelation's holy, 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 and early church, thousands getting saved, like that, the most combination of those having a baby at Asbury at that time, like just absolutely unreal. As these primarily were students just chasing after the heart of God. I mean, the altar's full, it's standing room only. Like, it was just unreal. It's really hard to put into words, but, and again, I still know a lot of people, so I'm catching up with mentors, with Zach, with teachers and stuff, professors, and we're, hey, how can we help? Is there anything you guys need? Because again, like they weren't expecting this, right? Zach talks about that. They weren't expecting. What's really cool, that day, Zach's up, he's preaching on love, God's love, and the gospel choir is leading worship, right? Well, they had worship practice the night before, and they were like, something's happening in the room, and so they ended up praying late into the night, right? Benjamin Black, a good friend of mine, is the director of that, and he was like, dude, it was just. He said, we walked into that chapel ready to go. And so maybe they knew, right? Because they were interceding and were ready for it. But it just kind of kept growing. And by then it's standing room only. It's kind of, they're trying to figure this out in the moment. What do we do? Right? What do you do when this happens? This thing that everyone's praying for. I mean, all the songs, right? God send revival, God, all these things. Oh man, it's happening. What now? How do we not mess this up? Right? What do we do?
Right. Yeah, that's the right question. How do we not mess it up?
How do we not get in the way?
Well, yeah, right. That's the right question. How do we not get in the way?
How do we not get in the way?
Because let him do what he's going to do.
Yeah,
it's going to be better that way.
Is way harder, right? You see something like, okay, we got it. We got the fire. Now here's what we're going to do. We need to bring this in and all these things. And like, I would have messed it up. Totally messed it up.
That's the history of Christianity.
Yeah. That's it right there.
You just described the history of Christianity.
We got it. We got the fire. Let's bring these things in. Oh, where'd the fire go? Like that's it.
Now let's define it and try to and then write the book and sell the book and
there's the work chart.
The
12 steps. This is it. Or step revival.
God's off doing something else by that time.
And he says, you know what? I'm not, this is crazy. Yeah. And so it was good. Through that, through those connections, and really asking the Lord too. I remember sitting up there with my wife going like, hey, God, if you really feeling, cause in all honesty, who doesn't want to lead that room? Who doesn't want, I mean, you speak one word, and 2,000 students just erupt. It's right, but not back to the performance, right?
Right.
But not because it's you, because the presence of God was so thick that you could feel it on your clothes. Like it was hard to stand at times. I remember sitting next to this guy. I was like, hey man, how's it going? Because people were just praying for each other like crazy. And he goes, it's going good, man. I have been here. This was later on. He goes, this is my 10th straight day in this room. I was like, oh my gosh. I said, are you okay? He's like, no, I have friends bring me food. And I was like, man, you have that ability. You just stay there. You just eat it up, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So, through those connections, through prayer, and just offering, hey, how can I help? The Lord did open the door to lead the room, for a handful of times. And man, was it crazy in all the ways you would never expect. Especially because I've led chapel there numerous of times, 4 years of leading chapel, right? And get it, it's chapel, right? This thing started from a mandatory chapel, right?
Yeah, right.
On a Wednesday. Like, you have to be there or you get marks against you, right? Super spiritual. It like that's how this started. And so that was what I knew was, there's 1,200 people in this room. About 20 of them want to be here, and the rest have to be here, right?
Right.
So completely different.
So good.
There's no set list. There's no fog. There's no lights. Like, and I'm not speaking again. I come out of that, where I'm at church wise. Again, I don't think those are bad things. Only when they get in the way, when the production and the performance get in the way of the presence, right? That's when we have issues. But I remember, stepping up there. Probably the third time. The only thing I remember praying before going up the first time was like, God, what do you want me to? What are you doing right now in the room? Like, what do you want us to lead in the room? What are you pushing in on? And something that Zach and the team, Asbury team, kept saying, it's like, going forward, we're just going lower. The only way to exalt him higher is to get lower, right? Which like just resonated because it's so, we already talked about it jokingly, but like, it's so easy to try to like, here's the formula. Here's how we need to get 2 baptism pools over here. We need to get these worship teams in. Like, it's so easy.
You've taken all the ministry classes. You know what to do now.
They're yes. It's 101, 301. It's all there. And so I was really just baffled at how they handled it, honestly.
Yeah. I was impressed just from the news, just from what I was hearing. I mean, I knew people who went and just to check it out, and and just their reports coming back, and just some of the news, and just kind of the way they handled it, I thought was in a good way mature. Like it wasn't like they were trying to, profit off of it, or I mean, there was just a lot of that I was impressed with.
No, for sure, and those opportunities were there, right? Like, I mean, you got that kind of publicity and. Speakers are reaching out, artists are reaching out. Hey, can I help? And, man, I will, and I know some people, they might disagree, but I will speak over it all day. I just think that they did such an incredible job, really asking God, what are you doing here? And how do we, if we can help, great. If we're just supposed to help facilitate, cause we were there a lot, my wife and I, and we took the kids. We wanted them to experience it early on. Like, hey, this is when you're later in life. I want you to remember, like, oh, I remember going, and especially our older ones. And so that's a big piece. But just really, I mean, those phrases, we're gonna go lower. Like, people asking. I got a ton of messages. After like once it started, I think I posted one video right on Instagram or something. And the next day, Abby's like, hey, have you checked that? I was like, no. And it's like halfway to 1 million, something stupid, right? And you're like, I have less than 1,000 followers. Like, this is not how this works. And going, okay, God, all these things are great. Would you humble my heart? Because it's so easy to just get proud, like, oh, now God's given me this platform and I need to use it, and I need to, it's like, or you just need to stay humble and let him do what he's going to do. And if he chooses, if you're the pencil in the box that he wants to pick up and use today, fantastic. If not, you will exalt him all the more and cheer on the pencil that's getting used. Like, it's just those pieces. So I really am just amazed at how they did it. And did you ever hear about the consecration room that they had?
I don't remember.
It's not out a ton, but they early on they were like, okay, because they're trying to bring it. Benjamin Black and the piano player, the first day played for like 13 hours. Because what do you do? Like, they were like, well, I guess we'll just keep playing. I don't know. I'm not stopping. And so they're trying to like, pick pieces up and stuff, but it was like 13 hours, something crazy. But it's starting to build traction, and they're deciding we're keeping the doors open. They're doing this, and this student, right? This student, not this ministry professor, not this doctor, not this thing. This student says, hey, because there was a green room at the time. He's like, hey, we're not having a green room. A green room is where you can hide and get snacks. Like, we're not having a green room. We're going to have a consecration room where every single person that steps on that stage has to get prayed for 30 minutes by this team of prayer warriors, I'll say, right? And that includes, all these kind of higher ups, like that are like, that includes you, everybody that steps on that stage gets prayed over. Which like, that's just different, man. That's wrecking. That is unreal.
Wow.
And it was cool. I remember being in that room, and you were supposed to have 30 minutes before you were stepping on stage. But sometimes you'd be like, it's 40 minutes and I ain't ready. The Lord has not, but that was, and so they had like kind of a schedule, if you will, a rotation.
Wait, so you're saying that God didn't say, all right, God didn't say, well, he only had 30 minutes to get you ready.
That's what I'm saying.
God didn't go by the schedule.
It was like, it was living and breathing. It was living and breathing. That is exactly what I'm saying. It was, I mean, there were times I kid you not, there were times people went in and didn't come out for hours. Like,
to the consecration room?
Yeah, because the Lord wanted to do a work in their life, right? And multiple times we would go up there because they, at this time, like 5-6 days later, they're starting to send teams out. It's really spreading. College campuses are coming and they're going, hey, we want to we're working on this. We've got a prayer. We're doing this as soon as we get back. Great. And so you go up to the consecration room and your whole team's up there just getting prayed over until you leave, which could be 30 minutes or it could be 3 hours. Like it didn't matter. But Wes Elliott, shout out to Wes, dude. He came up with that and orchestrated like the prayer people. I mean, in that, again, that level of like, again, I don't even know if I want to call it knowledge, but that level of listening to Holy Spirit in that moment is just unreal. To go, man, I don't want to mess this up. God, what are you doing? And to have something like that, and it changes a lot, right? And so it was cool, getting to lead the room when it was at its most packed, right? And then leading a number of times from 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning when no one's in there. Because they would later on, they would close it. They had to close it down for cleaning, right? They hadn't been cleaned in a week. And so they would shut it down for certain times to let the cleaning crew come in and to also like, I can't remember the exact verbiage, but like preservation of the room, like sanctificate, like this, like, let's let it breathe. Right. God is here, right? We want to steward this and honor this well. So, I mean, truly just some tremendous opportunities to lead, and it changes everything, right? Like I remember meeting with worship leaders in town who just went down and they're like, what do we do? Like once you experience the move of God,
right? How
do I go back and schedule my 3-song set list with a high energy song, an emotional banger, and like how do I go back and do that? And I know a couple people who either took sabbaticals or like had to step away for a while because they couldn't do it. They couldn't experience the move of God and then take that fire and put it into this little cookie cutter thing, right? Because it just didn't fit. It just didn't fit. And I think that was a piece of what the Lord wanted to do in the awakening or the outpouring of like, hey, I'm not, God said, I'm not saying these things are bad. I'm just saying, yeah, don't pray for all this. And then when it happens, don't not do anything about it. Right.
Right.
Don't, I mean, some crazy stuff.
Just as much as God, I mean, he's sort of, as I'm hearing you talk, just as much as God wanted to be in complete control in that room at Asbury, he wants that every Sunday morning, every time the church meets. Yeah, I mean, like that doesn't change.
Yeah, right.
With your small group on Thursday night or something like
right.
He wants to be, and that's actually the healthiest thing, is for him to be the center, for him to be the focus.
Yeah,
because if everything aligns with him, I mean, Jesus. Here's what Jesus said. Jesus said, "I only do what I see my Father do. I only say what I hear my Father say." And we feel like it's got to be this special time for people to go, I'm not going to even step on stage and play unless I feel God says it's time to step on stage and play. Like even though I'm trained and I know all the songs and like it has to be. And of course he gives those times to, to remind us that this is the core of everything. This is the core of, it's not just a special time. It is a special time. But we can go to our jobs this way. We can, and I know that sounds kind of crazy to people.
Yeah.
But that's the way Jesus modeled. Jesus. And if he had to say, I can do nothing of myself. I can only do, of course, he was humbling himself in order to do that. Mm-hmm. But he said, I can only do what I see my Father do. And he had to make that choice. And I only say what I hear my Father say. And those times teach us that. And so then, it should challenge us when we go back into our Sunday morning spaces and say, well, okay, he's still in control here, this kingdom over coffee. He's still the king. He's still the Lord. But he's also a good father who's, he's just as worried, not worried. He's just as concerned about the heart of the person leading worship as he is the hearts of the people in the room. Right. I mean, he's concerned about everyone's redemption and and the best for everyone. So, I mean, I just really appreciate you kind of sharing that. And so how about for you? How did it shift the way you led worship at your church?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it really gave a whole new meaning. I remember really asking the Lord after, like, God, what? Because it wasn't the Sunday, right? It started on a Wednesday. The Sunday after that wasn't the hard one. It was the Sunday after that. It was it was 10 days later. That's the one when you're like, there is a genuine outpouring of God happening 20 minutes down the road. What are we going to do about it? Like that's the one where you're gathering the lead team going, guys, we cannot just do the same thing. Like, I don't know. I don't have the answer. I really don't. But it feels so wrong to either ignore, act like it's not happening, or to not try to dig into that somehow.
Right.
Because it's hard, and it gives a whole new meaning to Hebrews 12. Our God is an all-consuming fire. Like he wants it all. Like, he's a jealous God. He wants it all, and
he's worthy of it all.
And he's worthy of it all, right? not out of like gimme. It's just like, my gosh, he
wants it all because he's worthy of it all. And if we don't give it all, that means we don't really know who he is. We're not even living
really know who he is.
We're not living in truth. We're living in a lie to not give him all. Because the truth is he's worthy of it all. Yeah. And he gives so much more than we give him. I mean, the return and benefits are so much more than we give him. We give him everything, and we literally get to be inheritors of the kingdom of God, right? I mean, like, it's like we really have nothing. Like, whatever we give him, we were going to lose anyway. Yes. But he's still worthy of it. And he's worthy of that. He's not going to force us. He's not gonna emotionally manipulate us either. Yeah, he's not gonna do that with us. He's gonna say, look, if you'll just submit, you'll see things you've never imagined. Like, you don't even know what I can do. But you have to live in those truths. And I know, because I've led worship meetings where people afterwards were like, we weren't even here. We were in another place. Like, I've led those, but my mentor, I'm so thankful for good mentors. You mentioned good mentors.
They're crazy.
My father in the faith said, it doesn't matter how high you float in worship. It matters how straight you walk when you land. Mm. And
that's good.
And believe me, we in worship with him, we flew. I mean, it was amazing. And there's a real spiritual reality to that. But God is also, but it means nothing if you don't turn around and walk with him in your day to day as being a husband and being a father. Like, it should change all of that. It's not just the Sunday meeting that it should change. It should also change your heart towards your wife. It should change your heart towards, like, that level of walking with him
Yeah.
it should infuse everything. And the other thing he told me, and I was thinking about this before, he said, look, the devil's mistake was a step. He said the devil was so close to God that when people were worshiping God, all he had to do was take one step and think it was about him.
Yep. It's that easy.
And so he was saying this as a warning to me and to others. He would say, man, when you are speaking and leading and you are in the spirit and you are leading and people are responding, they're not responding to you. Like because you kind of mentioned that. Like don't be deceived, because all it takes for a leader who is gifted and anointed to take that one step, it's way closer than you think it is. And so I love that. And I hadn't heard about that consecration room, because it is so important that teachers get a greater condemnation because they're standing in a place that is so easy to take that glory, to take that praise, to take that, and it's so easy to do. So that's why God's got to take you through some stuff. To really humble you and to forge that humility and so that he can trust you with that sort of stuff. So man, I love all of that. So as we're coming close to the end here, you've talked about the EP. Where can people find out more about you and the EP?
Yeah, for sure. It's available on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to music, YouTube.
Is it Micah Pace? It's under Micah Pace.
Yeah, okay. Micah Pace, MICAHPACE. And I am not very good at social media, probably because I hate it. I hate distractions. I really do. But I also understand, and I've seen the Lord say, like, hey, you know what? I can use that for good too.
Absolutely.
So Instagram is probably my most. I'm 30. But I'm not a trending 30. Like, I'm not up on. I don't have threads. I'm not on TikTok.
You don't do dances on TikTok.
I don't do
Holy
dances.
Spirit dances.
Man, it is. I people that do that and can keep up, like, that's a whole nother gifting I've just established that I do not have the ability to keep up with it. I don't. But Instagram, I try to. You'll see a lot of my kids. You'll see a lot of my family, but a lot of artist stuff. I just got to play Ichthus here in Lexington, which a lot of people have heard of.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Yeah, they had a
your
night of
mother-in-law
worship.
shared it.
Mother-in-law shared it again. Number one supporter. There's a whole crew of them. I was cracking up because Ichthus they're kind of restarting, right? Trying to get back in the vein that they were. And someone was like, well, how many do you think the night of worship? Like, it was like, well, one, I don't really care, but two, my family's coming and I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And so, like, my family plus Abby, that's like 30 people right there. So we should be good. I mean, it'll be fine. So that was a really cool experience. But for sure there, hit me up. I love to hear, if you listen to the song, like, let me know how it connects. It's been great because the songs speak. It's just 3 songs. It's 5 in total or 6 in total with like some interludes to be creative. Be the One, Good to Me, and All About You. I already talked about Be the One, how we got into that. Good to Me was what, and you probably have similar. Be the One was written over like 2 months. Good to Me was written in 30 minutes, watching my kids play. Right. I go back to that voice memo all the time. And it, to be honest, it wasn't a good season. Like, we had everything going on with Bear. My daughter Bo was colic at night, which, if you're a colic parent, God bless you.
Right.
There's a reason that sleep deprivation is a form of torture. Like, it just messes with you. I was working at Starbucks at the time and church, and so it was like 4 a.m. to 9 to 5. Like, it was not a great season. It was not the best. But I remember this voice memo, I've got it favorited because I remember watching them play and just being overwhelmed at just how good God is. And I really like to share that because it's easy for people to go like, oh, well, you're just so thankful for God because your life's so perfect, right? Like, because things are easy because you have, it's like not even close,
Mm-hmm.
like you can have all these terrible things and still be overwhelmed with just how good God is. And so Good to Me and then All About You, it was written way before Asbury, but the connection was really cool because the theme of it is just, God, if it's not for your kingdom, then kick it out. Like if it's not all about you, then we don't want it. Would you shut it down? So those songs are, really near and dear to me. It's been really cool to work through the process of your first project.
Mm-hmm.
Super humbling. It was,
did you do a lot of the audio engineering that you were talking about? Did you do a lot of that?
I got that degree, and then I worked at a recording studio for a while after school. And I remember sitting down with my boss and going, hey, man, I'm going to be honest. I would rather be the person singing into the mic than setting it up.
Right.
And he was like, I get that. And that felt prideful, but I think it was just like, you know what? I can do this. But I'm okay, God, if I'm supposed to be able to be the singer, like to be the one communicating what you're putting in my heart. And so I'm thankful for that, right? So I didn't. I had a good friend out of Nashville, would go down and record and love the work that he did on it. It was a blast. It was an absolute blast to see, the over 50 or 60 people who, it was all Kickstarter. Right? Because things are expensive. When people find out how much like books and songs cost, like, why? Aren't you just like, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry. It costs on average $1,000 to $2,000 to produce a song. Like, low end. It's just what it is. So super thankful for that. Super thankful for that opportunity. And so, it's up. People always ask, right? Like the week after, when's your next? Because what took you 8 months took them 20 minutes to get through, right? Like 8 months of your life can be listened to in 20 minutes. So it's man, when's the next thing? It's like, well, that's all I got right now. Okay, that's it. I got 400 voice memos that I'd like to turn into something, right? But it's good,
No, man, that's awesome. Well, so I'll put a link in the description, and we'll share. What's the best? What's the best one to share?
The best one to share,
Apple or what? Yeah, like what's the best place to share?
Probably Spotify or Apple. Those seem to be the. I try to keep up with the back end stuff, and those seem to be the highest levels.
Awesome. Well, dude, this was amazing. Your mother-in-law was correct. Did you hear me, Michelle? You were correct. This is a great conversation. And so if you would, man, just pray us out and just bless the people for listening.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, Father God, I just am thankful for this time. And here and now, Jesus, I just want to pray over every single person that is digesting this podcast, God. Would there be truth from you that can shift their lives, ultimately their heart, their mind posture, God, their worship posture. Would they hear, not Britt and Micah talking like it's great to communicate, but God, would they hear the truth of the Holy Spirit over their life, calling them into a deeper walk, a deeper relationship, that what they're living, right? This potential only Sunday faith, God, you have something so much deeper, God. And just as we spoke about, man, would we get to experience more of who you actually are, not the boxed up God that we so often present, Father, but the one, the God that raises, right, the dead, that makes us go, I don't know what to do. Like, because what we're doing it's not enough. Like, I don't know what to do. So would we continue to hand the reins over of our life to you? God, I think I'm thankful for Britt. I pray that you, God, bless his family, bless this podcast. God, those who are listening, Father, bless them. God, help them to feel your presence. If they're listening to this on the treadmill, at work, making dinner, whatever it is, God, would you bless them in this time? Father, make your presence known to them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, bro.